This bike here is a 2012 Kawasaki Vulcan 900 Classic LT, and in this video I'm going to show you how to remove the ignition lock, disassemble it, make a key, and put everything back together. This will work on all Kawasaki Vulcan 900s from 2006 to 2017. It will also work on other Vulcan motorcycles, but I'm not sure which ones, and you'll probably need a different key blank. The first step would normally be to remove the seat and disconnect the battery, but you can't get to the battery, you can't remove the seat without a key, so just be very careful when we're dealing. Later on in the video I'll show you when you remove the ignition lock, you have to remove the electrical switch that sits behind it, and that's going to be live since you can't get to the battery, so you're going to need to be very careful when dealing with that. So let's get started. The ignition lock is on the left side of the bike, right behind the rear cylinder, which I'm sure you know that already. It's only held on by one bolt. There's an Allen bolt right here. Normally it has a plastic piece covering the bolt just to make it look better, but I've taken that off. It's a 4mm bolt, and to get this off, all you do is remove, or to unsecure it from the motorcycle, you just remove that Allen bolt. And then you pull the lock out a little bit, and on the back of the lock are two Allen screws you need to remove. So remove those. Not Allen screws, Phillips screws. Once you have the two Phillips screws removed from this backing plate, you're going to notice that it's kind of spring loaded. You want to carefully remove the cover, and there's the cover. Set that aside. Then there's this switch. There's a switch plate here. Since you haven't disconnected your battery, this is where you want to be extremely careful, because some of these wires are 12 volt and you don't want to short it out. There's this white piece here. This white piece just slips through this plate, so it'll just slip the plate off, the electrical switch plate. Leave the white piece inside of the body like this, but be very careful. There's springs and ball bearings in here, so be careful when you're doing this. And then this switch plate, what you can do is wrap it in like a Ziploc bag or something so that it doesn't ground out on anything. Also, I want to show you on this lock housing, there's a slot here. This cover has a slot in it right here that lines up with this slot in the housing, so you know which way it goes back together. I don't know if you can see that. I should do this on the table, but yeah, let's get this on the table and I'll disassemble it even further. So here's an easier way to see this. Here's that notch I was talking about, the way this cover goes back on. And I added this tape just in case there's more than one way to put this lock back in. To make a key for this lock, you're going to need a pippin file. This is PIPPIN. You can find them online. Or you can try using a regular file, but it's easier with a pippin file. And you're going to need a couple of blanks, some blanks for screw-ups. The blank for this bike is a KA30. So you take the cover off, and then you have that switch plate that we left on the bike. This piece here fits in the middle of that switch plate, and the reason I didn't want you to just yank the switch plate off, because this piece will come off with it. And underneath this piece there are two springs that you can lose. You don't want to lose those. And then there are two ball bearings in here. There's one that you don't want to lose, and two. And also there's a spring in the middle here. I forgot to mention that this piece only goes on one way, so you don't need to mark it or anything. What holds this cylinder in is this copper looking wafer here. They call it a retaining wafer. And all you do to get this cylinder out is it's spring loaded, so you need to kind of work a screwdriver in there, push it down, and then push the cylinder down, and then it will start to pop out. And you want to be very careful here because there are wafers in this cylinder that can pop out. So see how I'm putting my finger over it so I don't lose anything, and then I can take that out, and this is the piece that you need to decode the lock and make a key. The wafers in this lock are spring loaded, as you can see here, and there are 7 of them for the Vulcan 900, 7 wafers, so there's 7 cuts in a Vulcan 900 key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the retaining wafer, which we're not going to worry about. That's just to hold the cylinder into the lock shell. On Japanese bikes, usually only one side of the key operates the lock, but they put cuts on both sides of the key so it's convenient. You can insert the key either way and still operate the lock. The side of the key with the cuts that's operating the lock will push down these wafers. As you'll see here, as I insert the key, they'll all start coming down. So it's this side of the key where we want to put the cuts. And when you insert the key blank, there are 4 possible cut depths, 1 being a no cut and 4 being the deepest cut. And once you have your key blank inserted into the lock, you can read the actual cuts on the key by how far the wafers pop out. The wafers that are even with the lock cylinder are a number 1, and we have 2 of them here. That means a number 1 cut is a no cut, so we just leave the key blank the way it is. This is a number 3, number 4, number 2, number 3, number 2. So at this point you could stop right here and take your key to a locksmith and tell him you want the key cut from the bow. This is the bow or head of the key to the tip of the key with cuts 3, 4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2. But we're gonna not do that, and we're gonna cut the key using a file, and I will do that next. Alright, to start cutting the key, take your key blank and the side where you're going to put the cuts on, just put some light marks on it using your file like that. That way you can easily see the marks made by the wafers, so you know where to put your cuts. So take that side of the key, make sure it's the side pushing down the wafers when you insert it all the way into the key. And then our first cut is going to be that number 3 wafer right here, and I want it to mark the key, so I'm going to take a ball peen hammer, small one, and just tap it. And then pull the key out. And this is the hard part, is seeing the marks. And just to help you out, I'm going to take a working key that's already been cut and show you about where the mark should be. This is my first number 3 cut here, number 4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2. So my first cut should be right around there. And if you look, hopefully you can see that in the camera, the mark the wafer made is right there. Oh, there you can see it, right there. So once you find that mark, that's probably the hardest part. Take your Pippin file, I just hold my thumb against it and cut into the key. So there's my, that'll be my first cut. So let's take a chunk of it off. and then insert it into the key, or into this lock. And as you cut, take more off the key, this wafer should start dropping. Where's my pointer? This wafer should start dropping, and when it drops down to where it's level with the lock cylinder, you can stop filing, like the number 1 cuts are here. And check it again and see where you're at. Don't make your cuts too wide this way because you're going to encroach into the other cuts on the key, so keep that in mind. You can see where we're at, still got a little ways to go. See, we're almost there. Just want to do a little bit at a time and keep checking it because you don't want to go too far. You can't go back, and I'm going to stop right there. So that's pretty close. So now we'll work on the next cut. I think there's already a mark for the next cut, but so I'm going to work on this number 4 wafer, the second wafer. I'm going to mark it. Pull the key out. I think my mark is right there. So do the same thing, just repeat what we did for the first one. And I know this is an even deeper cut because it's a number 4, so I have to go deeper than the first one. It's kind of hard trying to file this with the camera in between my hands and my body. And one problem you'll run into are these sharp edges will cause the key to stick, so you want to kind of take that sharp edge off. And even on the front here. So let's see how far we've gone. Almost there. Just a little bit more. Just a bit more. And I am going to stop there. So let me continue on and do the last 3 cuts off camera, and then I will be back. So here's my key after getting the cut depth or cuts correct. There's my first cut, second cut, 3 and 4's here, 5th cut, 6th cut, 7th cut. For the first cut, it's a number 3 depth, 4 depth, 1 depth, 1 depth, 2 depth, 3 depth, and 2 depth. After you finish cutting your key, you're going to have these sharp edges, and that can cause your key to stick. So I'm just going to take my file and just just smooth them out. That way your key will operate a little smoother. And then let's check it. Let's insert the key. And you can see they've all pretty close to the surface of the lock cylinder. So let's check our key and see if it actually works. Goes in like this. You're going to have to take a small jeweler's screwdriver and that spring-loaded retainer right here. You want to press that in so it will go inside the lock shell. How come it's not going? Oh, there it goes. You see the retainer popped out. Now it's locked in place. Now take your key. Remember, your key only works one way. It's not going to work. That's the way it works, and you see it does turn the cylinder. But if I insert it the other way, because I don't have cuts on this side of the key, it does nothing. So we know the key works. Now let's reassemble this stuff. I got to go get some grease. Alright, to reassemble this stuff, I'm going to insert this spring into the end of the lock cylinder. And then I got to deal with this guy. Make sure these two springs are in place. And I'm going to take some wheel bearing grease and put some grease over that spring and also the other spring. And then take your ball bearing, and that grease will hold it in place. And now this only fits on one way. You can see this groove right here, which is just right there on the end of the lock cylinder. So we want this to go together like this. And it's spring loaded, so when you have it in the right position, it should have some spring to it. So that is in place. So now we're ready to reinstall that switch plate. There's where we left off just a second ago. So put your switch plate on, make sure it's positioned correctly, and then take your cover and put that on, and then reinstall those two Phillips screws into the back of the lock. And now reattach the lock to the bike with the 4mm Allen bolt. I reconnected the battery, so now you can take your new key, insert it into the lock, start it up. One thing I want to mention before I end the video, just because you have a working key that works in one lock doesn't mean the key is going to work in the other locks on the bike, or that it may be sticky. The reason that is when you file a key, it's hard to be real accurate, and the locks on the bike don't all wear at the same rate because some locks are used more often than others. There's ways to fine-tune this key to get it to work in all the locks, but I don't want to get into that in this video. If you followed the video, if you got to this point, you should have a working key for the ignition so you can start the bike, and you should know what the correct cuts are for the key. With your bike information and the key cut information, you should be able to go to a locksmith and have them professionally cut a key for you. And that key should work smoothly in all the locks if it was cut on an accurate machine. So, yeah, that's how you make a key for a Kawasaki Vulcan 900 for years 2006 to 2017. Thanks for watching.